Hello, everybody, and welcome to August 1st, 2025. It is August, and that means it's the start of RPGaDay 2025. It's an initiative to promote conversations in the tabletop area through daily prompts for the whole month of August. You can check it out at the blog linked in the top of the comments in this short. But today's topic, patrons. And I want to talk about patrons in the One Ring second edition and how they're used. So when you're making your company, which is your group of player heroes, you can choose what patron you want to follow orders from. Who's going to give you missions? These can be big notable NPCs like Gandalf or Aragorn's mother. I forgot her name. This is a great tool to let the players choose what their adventure is going to be. Each patron has a specific kind of adventure style and style of missions they give, as well as favored classes. I forget what they're called in the One Ring. I think this is a great way to invite players to make a choice as to the destiny of the campaign. I'll catch you guys on the next one. What's up, guys? This is Eric with Cleric Cabin Games coming at you from Geek Game Days 2025. Recording my RPGaDay 2025. The prompt for today is the word prompt, and I want to talk about how you prompt players for feedback. I find the statement, "What are you doing?" is very powerful. It's a great way to turn the action over to the players, let them know that they can talk now. But I think a better way to do it is to present their choice as a binary and present. So you say, do you go through the door or do you want to stay in the hallway and listen? And also prompt them to give their own feedback, their own ideas. I think both of these are really powerful tools when you run a tabletop RPG. That's my little GM advice. And happy RPGaDay 2025. I hope you're all doing well. Catch you on the next one. Happy Sunday, folks. This is Eric with Cleric Cabin Games coming at you for RPGaDay 2025, August 3rd, Sunday. And the prompt today is tavern. When I think of tavern as it relates to tabletop RPGs, I think of boring starts to adventures, right? We all know the typical you start in a tavern and go, right? And I guess I find someone shadow in the corner to give me a quest. That's boring and flat and so tough to work with, especially for a new player. They don't really know what to do. I feel like a much better start is a dynamic place where they are connected to. So one of the good advice I've heard in the past is for them to start at a funeral of someone they were close to, and then that person's death could kick off the adventure. Or you could start on a ship where they're all there for different reasons, perhaps, but it's a locked location. But that's all I've got for this one. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good one. Happy Monday, folks. This is Eric with Cleric Cabin Games coming at you with another RPGaDay 2025. For today, Monday, August 4th, the prompt for today is message. Now, when it comes to messages in tabletop RPGs, there's sort of some tropes involved in the various settings we play with. A lot of people in modern games have cell phones, so that's instant communications. In fantasy games, you have things like magical means of communication, so you can justify talking to each other very rapidly, even at long distances. In sci-fi, you have near instant communication. But what I find interesting is when you play against type in one of these RPGs, when you introduce complications to communication. Just ran a one-shot of Mythic Bastionland over the weekend, and I introduced an element of you not speaking the same language as the NPCs. I feel I went a little too far, so I'm thinking a lot about how I can do better next time and really keep communication open, but make it a puzzle. That's all I got this time. Hope you have a good one. Happy Tuesday. This is Eric with Cleric Cabin Games coming at you with another RPGaDay 2025. Today is Tuesday, August 5th, and the prompt for today is ancient. When I hear ancient in the context of tabletop RPGs, it makes me think of Braunstein games, which were a kind of almost live-action roleplay that predated Dungeons & Dragons and really were what I think the cause for Gary Gygax's inspiration to make Dungeons & Dragons the way that it was. Dave Arneson played in these games. A man called Dave Wellesley makes these games and runs them, facilitates them at cons still in the area. He was doing this before Arneson's setting Blackmoor was completed. And it was really a big inspiration for Arneson to kind of inject more story into his game instead of just making it pure war games. I recommend if you get a chance, give Braunstein games a Google. I'll spell it in the comments and see if you like it. That's it for today. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Wednesday, August 6th. The prompt, motive. I want to talk about OSR character design. When you buy an OSR adventure from creators such as Brad Kerr or Chris McDowell or Yochai Gall, you'll notice something common about all of their designs of any NPCs in their book. They're very simple, right? Stat block, super simple. Just the name of the stat and a number, and that number is the stat. But each of them, and I see this in the story game front too, I see this a lot in games like Avatar Legends, they have a drive, a quick, maybe 8-word sentence about what that character wants, what they're about. I think this is a super powerful tool that you can bring into your game today, and it will make your game better. Gone are the days of the 5e adventure book, the paragraph belonging to one character about their whole deal, their whole shtick. We're done. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025. This is GM Eric coming at you. Prompt, Journeys. Date, Thursday, August 7th. I want to talk to you about hex crawls. I've been running quite a few hex crawls lately, and I've been thinking about how well they organize information and add sort of a spatial element, giving the players agency in choosing which direction they would like to go. I think this is really valuable, but I think it's especially accentuated when the hex crawl is pretty dense. You want to put locations, I think, between maybe 1 or 2 hex crawls of each other. If there's parties just going over multiple empty hexes, that's no fun for anyone. You want them to have things that they can discover in those hexes, interesting things going on for whatever your system that you're running might be. And I really like systems and value systems that make hex crawls, let you zoom in on hex crawls when it makes sense. One game that really does this well is Mouse Ritter with its estate box collection. That's it. I'm done. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Friday, August 8th. Prompt, Explore. I want to talk about how I digest a new RPG system. When I receive a new core book, I'm normally very excited to get it, and I immediately flip to the table of contents to see the different chapters in the book. Normally there's a section talking about the core mechanic. That's where I go first. I want to understand what's going on with this system, what the system's trying to put forward. And you can find this works for quick starts too if you find those for free. Once I get an idea of how the core mechanic works, then I go to character creation. I figure out what you do to make a guy, right? And once you've made your person, then I go to the GM section, especially if I plan on GMing this game, and I want to see what advice the designer has for a game master running this game. Common pitfalls maybe they point out, or their examples of play are great in the GM section. Any GM tools that it has. I feel like these 3 chapters in an RPG book are everything. That's it. I'm out. Bye. RPGaDay 2025, Saturday, August 9th. Prompt, Inspire. I want to talk about inspiring the next generation of RPG players. So I often see a lot of retirees, a lot of guys going to cons and playing locally, looking for a group who are older, who are retired, and they are still playing RPGs, and they have such a wealth of great games made by great designers to choose from. And I really want that when I'm at that age, when I'm 30 or 40 years from now. And I think the only way we get there is by inspiring the next generation of the hobby to make sure that it's still around. And I think to do that, we got to do something I find very few GMs want to do, which is run games for kids and younger people. Because without inspiring the younger people, our hobby's cooked, man. It's done. How can we do that? I think one great way is to run at a library, to try to partner with a school, to do an after-school program if you're a teacher, to run games for these kids, because I know it can be tough, but we got to do it. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Sunday, August 10th. Prompt, Origin. I want to talk about how I got started running con games. So I went to a little con called Coast Con in Biloxi, Mississippi. It's where I played my first Adventurers League game. My GM was terrible. By far the worst Adventurers League GM I ever had, and I played hundreds of hours of Adventurers League content after that. He would look down in his screen, he'd talk to his screen so we couldn't even hear him. He didn't really know the adventure too well. He would arbitrarily deal us damage with no save. He would look up and yell at cosplayers as they passed. And when he finally killed us in a room where we were vastly outmatched by some enemies, he pumped his hands in the air like this, yelling, "We got a TPK over here." By far, worst experience. Sort of my villain story. I was like, con games have to be better than this. So I took it upon myself to run them. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Monday, August 11th. Prompt, Flavor. I want to talk about consumables and how they're used in RPGs. I think consumables are a very interesting design space. I think a lot of games have used them very well. You can really get away with designing somewhat overpowered abilities into one-time use objects. So I want to talk about two kind of sides of the coin of consumable things. The first side is consumables as they're used in the Cypher system. They have amazing abilities, but you use them once and then they're gone. They're called ciphers. Which is where the name of the game comes from. The flip side of the coin are the quantum items in your loadout in Blades in the Dark. Some of these are consumable. You use them once and then they're gone. I think that's a great space too, because you don't have to commit to having it unless you know you need it. These are just two sides of using consumables, and they have different flavors. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Tuesday, August 12th. Prompt, path. I want to talk about adventure paths put out by Paizo. It's kind of how that company got its start. I got a lot of respect for Paizo. I think they've done great things in the industry. And I'll be honest, Pathfinder, not my game. But that doesn't mean I don't like that they respected their unionizing employees. And I think they do some other great things to innovate and create new content for people who want crunchy, high fantasy games. And they really got started by creating these adventure paths, these module series that were all interconnected. And I do like that idea when it comes to designing a campaign. You know, GMs don't have a lot of time necessarily. They want to have something that's just pre-written that they can run with. They don't want to string a bunch of stuff together. But I think the evolution of the Pathfinder adventure path is something like Mouse Ritter's The Estate box set, where you have a hex crawl with a bunch of individual hexes. Each has its own zine. I think that's the way forward. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Wednesday, August 13th. Prompt, darkness. I want to talk about real-time mechanics and their use in games. I promise I'll get back to darkness in a second. I think all of us as people living in a modern society have a relationship and an understanding with time. And so real-time mechanics are a great way to really communicate ideas in your design as you're writing a tabletop role-playing game or tabletop role-playing adventure. I think a game that does this exceptionally well is Shadow Dark. You are low-power adventurers with not a lot of hit points going into a dungeon. And it's dark down there. And when you light a torch, one of your few bundle of torches that you have, you start an hour timer. And when that timer runs out, the torch goes out. Another game that I think uses a real-time mechanic well, 10 candles. There are 10 candles on the table. They're all lit at the start of the game. Every so often in the game, you put out a candle. If a candle goes out on its own, that's it. Once they're all out, you're dead. That's it. I'm gone. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Thursday, August 14th. Prompt, mystery. I want to talk about quantum mysteries versus linear mysteries. Linear mysteries are things seen in games like Gumshoe, Night's Black Agents, or any of those kind of spin-off Shanty Hunters, where there is an absolute answer and you're slowly getting clues to build towards that answer, right? The whodunit, where someone actually did it. There's a character that's created that performed the murder, and the game is you discovering who that was. That is juxtaposed by a quantum mystery, which is seen in games like Brindlewood Bay, where you find clues, and then it is on the players to correlate those clues to come up with a satisfying explanation for who done it. Basically, there are clues and there are characters, and the players, as they play, figure out and theorize whether or not that person did it. I really like the quantum mystery element because it lets there be more input and agency by the players, whereas clues I feel like are too fixed. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Friday, August 15th. Prompt, deceive. I want to talk about social skills in RPGs. I think different RPGs treat social situations very differently. You've got the OSR approach, which relies on the player skill. Tell me what your character says, and we'll see how it goes. There probably won't be a roll, all the way to, in story games, the majority of the mechanics have to do with talking to people or dealing with problems through any kind of means, and that normally involves a roll. I'm a big fan of incorporating character skill through things like roles and meta currencies. I think those are both two great opportunities to bring in something that a player lacks, but they want their character to have. Things like, I may not be the best talker in the world, but my character, I want to have a high charisma. Or I may not be the smartest person in the world, but my character is intelligent and can solve problems. That's what I think. What do you think is the best system for social situations? That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Saturday, August 16th. Prompt, overcome. I want to talk about meta currencies, the tool that you can use to overcome a challenge that you otherwise would have failed. I think meta currencies are solid bits of design that are often not rooted in what's happening in the game, which can kind of take people out of the action. I think that you sacrifice verisimilitude and you sacrifice a little bit of time, neither of which I think are a bad thing. I think meta currencies, when used well, are great tools to make your players feel more responsible in the destiny of their character, in choosing how and when they want to apply the pressure. And I do generally like them in games like Fantasy Flight's Star Wars series with the light side and dark side points, and with Devil's Luck in Pirate Borg and other board games. That's it for me. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Sunday, August 17th. Prompt renew. I want to talk about character death and the opportunity that it brings. When a player character dies in a tabletop RPG, it is potentially a tragic experience. Players get a lot more attached to their characters than they used to back when the game first started. And I think really the opportunity is to introduce something new to the story, a new story beat, a new story element. Also to venerate the fallen, make the conflict and the quest itself feel a lot more costly and a lot more personal. But I think the trap is not being able to plug a new character in immediately. If that player doesn't have a character ready to go, or character creation isn't fast, then that player could potentially feel punished for having their character die, or having had their character die, because they just have to sit at the table and not engage, and no one wants to do that. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Monday, August 18th. Prompt sign. I want to talk about RPG reference sheets of rules. My first exposure to this were GM screens. I think GM screens are great when they're specific to a system because they can communicate system-specific information directly to a GM by being in front of them, which I think is a great way to really boil down what rules are very important that a GM has access to and easy reference to. Now, these have been expanded through more story games like Powered by the Apocalypse and Forged in the Dark into play sheets, where it's a document that contains not only the playbooks on which the characters create their characters, but also rules reference sheets. A la Blades in the Dark has a great example of this. Wicked Ones, I've seen great sheets for Masks and other games like that. Slug Blaster has some really great rules reference sheets. These are great tools to communicate information to your players without them having to demand the GM's time or dig into a lengthy rulebook. That's it for me. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Tuesday, August 19th. Prompt Destiny. I want to talk about mechanics in tabletop RPGs that let a player set their goalpost for what they want to happen with or to their character that session. Mechanics like beats in Heart, or ambition and desire in Vampire V5, or in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th Edition, the short-term and long-term quests that a player character and the party set, and the effect that these have in a tabletop RPG session and campaign. These are great mechanics for a player telegraphing to not only the GM but to the rest of the table what they want their character to be doing in the context of that session or that campaign, and what they're interested in. I think they're great bits of design, and I would love to see more mechanics like this in the RPG space as designers look for ways to do advancement. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Wednesday, August 20th. Prompt enter. I want to talk about how we can bring new people into tabletop RPGs. I think there's 3 big rules that you should apply to your game if you're running in public trying to get more players interested in the hobby as a whole. First of all, you need to make your game friendly and interesting. What I mean by that is best if people see you and your players laughing, having fun, telling jokes, reacting to dice rolls. That's a way that draws eyes. Second, I think we need to meet people where they're at. We can't really just run games at conventions and game stores anymore. All the people that go there, for the most part, already know what the game is, know what the hobby is, and kind of have their opinion one way or another. The third thing we need to do is we need to be open and inviting to beginners. We need to give them a through line into our games, whether that's a character sheet we can give them right in that moment and invite them to come roll some dice for however long they have, anything like that. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Thursday, August 21st. Prompt, unexpected. I want to talk about dice and their place at the table. I'm a big believer in dice. I love a good randomizer in a tabletop RPG. And I think dice's best value is when narrative stakes can be tied to the dice, where we all know what'll happen on a success, we all know what'll happen on a failure. Or, barring that, where dice can give you a resource, like in Fantasy Flight Star Wars. There's the narrative dice system using all those funny colored dice. They don't just resolve on one axis, right? You have your success failure, which is the traditional axis, but there's also advantage and threat. So you could succeed at something and something bad happens to you anyway, or you can fail at something, but something good happens on the side. There's also triumph and despair, which are kind of like critical hit and critical miss, and they can both happen at the same time. I think that's the most interesting thing dice can do for us, and I love seeing it at the table. That's it for me. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Friday, August 22nd. Prompt, ally. I want to talk about something I don't talk about very often, and that's World of Darkness games. I love that in character creation in those games, you can buy certain advantages and certain flaws. One of the things you can put your points into as far as advantages go is you can create an NPC ally for your character. Just out the gate, start with someone who's in your corner, who's got your back. That really goes a long way to grounding your character into the situation and creating leverage for yourself to achieve your goals as a, person of the night, because I don't think anyone plays traditional World of Darkness anymore. Everyone's playing vampire or mage or werewolf. And it's nice to have people who are just normal people in society, but work with you. Right? I think that's a great way to plug in narrative ties and connections because these people are part of your life. And I think World of Darkness does a great job at that. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Saturday, August 23rd. Prompt, recent. I want to talk about the cult of the new and how it relates to the tabletop RPG hobby. Cult of the new is a term in board gaming culture that refers to the group of people that are always buying the latest and greatest in board games. And it's a very expensive pursuit. They always only want to play the newest games. And I find the way I collect tabletop RPGs is very similar. I'm always trying to play new games. To me, I'm always acquiring new RPGs and I'm the most excited about them. Those are the ones that I want to add to my collection and get to the table as soon as possible. And I find myself not going back to these somewhat older, great games that I have. If it's new to me, that's the one I want to play. How do you collect? What do you think? That's it. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Sunday, August 24th. Prompt, reveal. I want to talk about revealing information, how that can color a player's decisions. Something I've struggled with a lot lately, running specifically the game Mythic Bastionland, but generally the more OSR style games, is I find myself having this weird compunction to, when a player is seeking information, make them roll for it rather than just giving them the information. The book tells me as the GM, just answer the questions. Just if they want to find out some information, there's normally someone around, there's normally a source for them to get information, but I find myself constantly wanting to make them pass a save or make some kind of roll to earn that information. And I don't know where this habit came from. I suspect it comes from my trad games of running RPGs, things like 4th and 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons, but I want to break myself of it. However, I still love making players roll for information and giving them a budget of questions to ask, Blades in the Dark style. That's all I've got to say today. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Monday, August 25th. Prompt, challenge. I want to talk about challenge dice in the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game. How brilliant of a design I think they are. It's a D12, it's red, and it's a bad die. It's one of their proprietary dice. It has only bad symbols on it. One of the 12 sides is blank. About half of the sides have double symbols, which is worse for you. Half of the sides have single symbols, and one side has the despair icon. And despair counts not only as a failure symbol, which counters success symbols that they roll on their good dice, but it also counts as a despair super resource. And a despair cannot be canceled. It happens. And the despair is kind of that critical fail moment that a player rolls where everyone knows that something of major narrative significance is going to happen. I think that's a great bit of tech, and it's a reason I love the Fantasy Flight Star Wars game. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Tuesday, August 26th. Prompt, nemesis. I want to talk about Hasbro's ownership of Wizards of the Coast's ownership of Dungeons and Dragons and how it affects our hobby. I am part of an organization called Forward RPG. We're a group of GMs who love running non-D&D games for the public. We love introducing people to the hobby. We love getting them exposed to games that they wouldn't encounter otherwise. And I feel like that's really our mission as an organization. I think the reason Forward RPG's mission should be supported is because the Goliath in the industry, Dungeons and Dragons, is very protective of its stake in the markets. And all the choices they make are to the detriment of indie RPGs. And now they're even more than ever, they're trying to create a walled garden of their products where you can only use their stuff and they actively disincentivize you to use stuff created by other publishers, which I have a really big problem with. That's all I got for today. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Wednesday, August 27th. Prompt, tactic. I want to talk about teamwork actions in tabletop RPGs. I love a good teamwork action. I think they make a game sing, and I think they're a vital piece of design for any RPG, and they especially are good if you have a bigger table player count like I find myself having. I want to shout out some of my favorite teamwork actions in tabletop RPGs that I've played. Modiphius' 2D20 system has a great aid action. Blades in the Dark is kind of, at this point, one of the driving forces of teamwork actions. It has 4 of them, aid, lead a group action, protect, and there's one more that I'm forgetting. 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons. I don't often talk up Dungeons and Dragons, but I love the Warlord class and how it could interact with people. Draw Steel just came out, and I'm really curious to try that because I hear there's a lot of sort of combo move mechanics and teamwork actions within that game. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Thursday, August 28th. Prompt, suspense. I want to talk about epilogues and how they can be used in tabletop RPGs. I think something that's very important to a tabletop RPG story overall through a campaign is pacing, right? It's how you maintain suspense. And you're building up, you have your rising action, rising action, rising action. You hit a climax at the top where everything is decided. It's that big boss battle. It's that moment where you know whether or not the heroes have succeeded. And then after that, I think it's important for the narrative cohesion that there's a falling action where you come down, things get calmer. We see what things are like after the big change happened in the climax. And I think the back end of that is so well supported by something like an epilogue mechanic. There are epilogue mechanics in games like Slug Blaster that are really built in. I find giving players an epilogue gives them space to really end their character's story in the way that they want. And I find that so much more satisfying than just fading to black at the end of a boss battle. That's all I got for today. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Friday, August 29th. Prompt, connect. I want to talk about how you can find players for your next tabletop role-playing game in person. I've been doing this for quite a while, organizing games in person for tabletop RPGs all the way from Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, when I organized for Adventurers League for several years, to now where I do not play Dungeons & Dragons. I play everything but Dungeons & Dragons, basically. I found the best ways you can connect with new people and bring them into your game is, 1, ensure that you include all pertinent information of the game. I like to use the who, what, where format of posting, and it's very friendly to social media. You can prompt each bullet point with an emoji that draws a lot of eyes, and include just a simple Canva image, because you want to have the information about the game in as concise of a manner as possible. The second advice I'd have for you is post in new platforms. Try to reach out wherever you can across social media. You'll bring new people in, and that'll make your group stronger. That's all I got for today. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Saturday, August 30th. Prompt, experience. I want to talk about different advancement systems in various RPGs and what I think of them. First up, Dungeons and Dragons and its monster pinatas. At least in 3rd edition and beyond, once Wizards of the Coast got hold of the franchise, experience was directly linked to the monsters you defeated. I call this monster pinatas because when you kill a monster, when you pop them, you get XP based on what that monster was. I think this is one of the worst ways to do advancement because it promotes combat, and that's it. It doesn't really offer to reward you for any other elements of the game. There's also time served. I call it the prison method of experience granting, used in games like Fantasy Flight Star Wars RPG. where you get XP based on the amount of time you play in a game. But my favorite kind of advancement is beats from Heart, the City Beneath, from Rook Rowan and Deckard Games. Those players pick a narrative achievement they want to hit during the session. If they hit it, then they get an advancement. I love it. That's it. I'm out. Have a good one. RPGaDay 2025, Sunday, August 31st, the last one. Prompt, reward. I want to talk about incentive structures in tabletop RPGs and why you should stop giving your players gold pieces as their only reward. So in tabletop RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons, gold pieces are the traditional reward for when a quest giver has presented the party with a quest. They've achieved it by going to the dungeon, taking care of the problem, coming back, and the quest giver gives them their just desserts, which normally is an amount of gold pieces. That's fine for gear progression and things like that, but narratively, it's a very unsatisfying reward. Gold pieces are just one and done payments. They give the party an ability to go shopping, but that's about it. I find rewards that provide narrative hooks are much better. Things like cursed magic items that have their own goals and desires, or a property in the realm that makes the party much more invested if the realm's having cataclysmic issues, or even a stake in a merchant's guild where they can make money through the merchant's guild, but they have to support it and deal with problems that the merchant guild's facing. That's all I've got for today. Have a good one.